So for those of you, if any of you, for those of you who might know me from my podcast, Dinner, Peace, and Menopause and Beyond, welcome. Maybe we have never seen each other in person before, so hello. And for those of you who maybe are some of my clients who we've never actually seen each other in person, hello. It's good to see you. And for those of you that we've never met before and you're really interested in finding possibly a totally different way of looking at your body and weight, especially if you're going through menopause, this is going to be for you. And I want to tell you just a little bit about myself, but first I want to share my screen with you so you can all see it because I've got a special program for you today. And I think I've seen some of you before on my podcast my webinar that I did a couple weeks ago. So this is kind of like a repeat of that, only there'll be different questions and I'll probably say things in a different way. But I think this is one of my favorite webinars to do because it's my newest tools that I use and it scares people the most. So I like to talk about it. So first, let me share my screen with you. Okay. So hopefully all of you can see my screen and it says Stop Overeating in Masterclass. And if somebody can just tell me, somebody else just told me they're from Alaska. Woo, I love it. Can you see my screen? I would just love to make sure that you can see the Stop Overeating on my screen. Can somebody tell me that? Thank you, Debbie. Debbie is my participant. Thank you. Okay. All righty. So this is about Stop Overeating. And if you're overweight, there's only one reason why you're overweight, and that is because you overeat, period. And if it's not because you overeat, rarely is it another problem. And if it is another problem, this class will not be for you. But if you are one who overeats and cannot figure out how to stop it, then I think I have some new information for you. So first of all, I'm Dr. Deb Butler. And one of the things that I want to tell you about myself, I don't want to spend a lot of time on me, but I do want to tell you that I suffered with overeating for 30 years, and it really wasn't until I went through menopause that I figured out a different way. So for my first 30 years, I was a lifetime Weight Watcher member, and nothing against Weight Watchers, but for me, I only used it to gain weight. To lose weight. Well, I don't know, maybe gain weight too. Because really what I did is I only went when I had the same 20 to 30 pounds to lose. I'd go to class, I'd weigh in, I'd count points, and as soon as my weight was back down to my goal weight, the minute it was down to my goal weight, I was gone, and pretty soon I thought I could be on maintenance, and that meant I could eat more and do whatever I wanted and went back the same way over and over and over and over again. I was obsessed with my weight. I was obsessed with what to eat. And to top it all off, for my first 30 years, I was a chiropractor who dealt a lot with nutrition. So therefore, it was, I was kind of like, it was embarrassing and I was a little bit ashamed that I couldn't figure it out for myself. I knew what to eat. Most of my clients that I talk to, they know what to eat too. So what to eat is not as much as the problem as to why you eat. Now, I am going to talk a little bit about what to eat today because it's some of my newer tools, but I want to tell you first and foremost that what is going on with you has more to do with what's going on in your brain and why you do what you do than anything else. Now, the thing about menopause that I think makes this special is, and I know some of you aren't in menopause, perfectly okay if you're not. You do not have to wait another 20 years to hear this information. But I think what's so good about menopause is that, like, for instance, for me, I spent 30 years trying different things. All of it that had to do with denying myself, restricting myself, telling myself that there was something wrong with me, and always wanting to be able to eat food. So I was always using my own willpower to stay away from foods that I thought I couldn't control myself around. And if you're one of those people who actually feels like you can't control yourself around specific foods, you will always be overweight because you're always going to have this specific problem with what we call overdesire. And when I actually became a life and weight coach, which was as I was kind of ending my chiropractic career and looking for something that I was passionate about, I found coaching. And when I found coaching and I found how the brain works and how to affect people's minds, it was mind-blowing for me. And of course, I wanted to do something with people's bodies since I had been working with people's bodies for 30 years. But I wanted to be able to connect the mind and the body together. And that's when I came up with this whole weight program, because it's what helped me get inside my own head, figure it all out. And that is what I want to help you with. And there's actually 2 levels to my program. Today, I'm starting with the 2nd level. So it's the more advanced, but you can start with the advanced too. But for those of you who've listened to me for a while, you might know some of my other tools, which if you're using them and they're working perfectly, I don't want you to change a thing. This is just more information. So let me go on and talk about the things that we're going to talk about today, now that you know just a little bit about me. And may I say to you, number one and foremost, that at 50 years old, I stopped going to Weight Watchers. The hardest thing in my whole life was throwing my Weight Watcher card away, because I carried that with me way after I stopped, as if just in case I really ever couldn't trust myself again, I could go back to Weight Watchers. I really kept it probably for another 1.5 years. And that's what I think we all have. We have this fear that we can't really trust ourselves. Let me tell you how beautiful it is to know, and this is for myself, that I know that I can trust myself and have confidence in myself around any food in any situation. Food is just food. I can't tell you how liberating it is. And I'm hoping that maybe by the end of this webinar, you can start seeing the light that could be possible for you too. Because if I was 50 when I started and now I'm way older than that, I haven't dieted for like almost 15 years. And let me tell you what, I get to fill my life with a lot of other stuff other than what am I going to eat? When am I going to eat? When am I going to lose my weight? When am I blah, 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 blah. Obsession. It's over. I wish that for you too. Now, if you're not in menopause, you can wait or you can start now. For those of you that are in menopause, let me tell you that what you've been doing, if it's not working, it's not going to work better in menopause. I guarantee you. And I think what you get to learn right now, that if it isn't working, there is a better way, and you're smart enough to know what doesn't work. And so you're also smart enough to know and to find out what will work and to make this your last time, the very last time. All right, so this is what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about the 2 reasons that we overeat, and there's only 2. And I'm going to talk to you about the most important thing to eat when you want to lose weight, and also the 2 things to avoid. And this is where I get into some more advanced stuff, but it's very gentle. You can take it. And also at the very end of this, I'll tell you how you can get more help from me if you would like it. So let's go. Okay. If you're overweight, as I said to you in the beginning, and I'll say it to you again, it's because you overeat. All right. Now, you overeat for only 2 reasons, and I want you to really get clear on this. You overeat, number 1, because of overhunger, which means either you're hungry all the time, which means that when you're eating, you don't feel like you can stop, but there's something going on with you. I work with so many people where I start teaching this hunger scale, and a hunger scale, which I'm not actually going into today, but very, very important. A hunger scale is something that you can imagine in your mind that goes from a -10 to a +10. And a -10 is starving, and a +10 is stuffed. Now, a +10 to me will feel like on Thanksgiving in the olden days where I had to take my clothes off. That's what I had to do in order to feel comfortable. That's a +10. And a -10, well, I'm not sure any of us have ever felt that, and I don't even know if I've ever felt that. But what I teach my people, my clients, my podcast listeners, anybody that's listening to my blog, is that you need to pay attention to this hunger scale and actually start eating way before you get to a -10. I call it a -2, and to stop eating at a +2, which is the lightness of hunger and the lightness of fullness. Now, what I find for a lot of my clients is that it feels like this hunger scale isn't working, because if they start eating when they're lightly hungry and they stop eating when they're lightly full, they feel like they're hungry all the time. They feel like they can't stop. This is overhunger. This is one of the reasons why you overeat. You're hungry all the time. The other thing is overdesire. And overdesire means that you have a strong desire to eat. Now, the interesting thing about overdesire is it comes more from your mind, and overhunger actually comes more from the physiology of your body. And these are both mind-body connections, but they work in very different ways. And I'm going to tell you a little secret right now, that if I could teach you where overdesire comes from by the end of this webinar, you could change everything you do from the minute you get off of here if you understand this concept. Because this is what I think we're all missing, and this is why I think willpower doesn't work, and this is where I think diets don't work, is because if you still keep the same desire for the foods that you're not eating, sooner or later, you're going to eat them, and you're going to eat them when you're not hungry, and you're going to eat them for psychological reasons. Now, let me just say this. Number one, there is absolutely nothing wrong with you. Your brain is working perfectly. I am a coach that has everything to do with the brain and you becoming aware of what is going on in your brain. But from a physiological point of view, the brain does two things. It looks for pleasure, and it avoids pain, and it does what's working. So what would that look like for you or for me? All right. If you're one of those people, like I was one of those people, that to me the easiest way to feel better was to eat something, that's called pleasure. And not to eat something that I think I really desired was painful. And so my brain learned at a very early age, to be honest, 12 years old, it learned, because that's when I started my first diet. And that's when I learned, it was painful, you know, like I remember like I was 12 years old and I weighed more than some of my friends. This is so sad. But this is the culture that we live in, and this is how our brains start functioning. And I thought that there was something wrong with my body, and the only way I could think of how to change that was just to stop eating, because eating was what was putting weight on me. And so I think I had a hot dog a day. So sad. But that's what I did at 12 years old. And let me tell you what, my goal was by the time that we weighed in, this was right going into junior high school, so it would be like middle school now. You know, we had to weigh in the gym with a lot of people. Can you imagine 12-year-old girls doing that? It's horrible. And I got on the scale, and I was at a weight that I was happy with. But, you know, from there, you know, my brain was going, well, that was enough of that. You know, we need some pleasure, baby, because, you know, it was pleasurable getting on the scale. It's pleasurable losing weight. But what was more pleasurable was not feeling the pain of feeling uncomfortable. So sooner or later, I was back. And that was the beginning of my brain figuring out how to find pleasure from food, how to avoid discomfort, which is really going to be all about feelings, and do what's working. So the easiest thing my brain figured out is when you don't feel good, sweetheart, we eat. And I will just do it for you automatically, and you don't have to even think about it. And it becomes very, very unconscious. So let me ask you this. When we talk about hunger, what would happen if you ate only when you were hungry and you stopped when you were full? And I'm going to give you the answer right away. I don't know what you're thinking, but here's the answer. This. You would start feeling disappointment. And when I think of disappointment, I think of this. Have you ever been out to a meal? Like I like to go out to eat a lot. And sometimes, beautiful meals are being served to me. Wonderful restaurants. And as soon as I get to what I call fullness, which was what I call my +2, I stop. And sometimes, you know what my brain does? Oh, oh, shoot, man, that looks so good. I want more. Can't we have a little bit more? It's disappointing. You have to be able to sit with disappointment. You have to be able to sit with irritation if you're not willing to eat. I talk to a lot of younger moms even now that are really irritated when they come home and all their kids are going crazy. And the easiest thing to do is when they're serving them lunch is for them to eat too, only they're not hungry, but they're really irritated. And eating takes the momentary pain of that irritation. So, all of these negative emotions like frustration, overwhelm, talk to so many women that feel overwhelmed all the time. And they can't think. I talk to women. This is really interesting. I talk to some women who work from home. And you know what a lot of things they say to me, and this may be you too, is when they're working and they become overwhelmed, and I'll talk to you a little bit more about where overwhelm really comes from, but it is still a feeling. It's a really uncomfortable feeling. And the more uncomfortable you get, you know what they say to me? Well, the kitchen is just right down the hall. So the reason that I can't lose weight is because I work at home and the kitchen is too close to me. That's the reason. Can I tell you how many people say that to me? Now, you may be listening to and maybe laughing, or you may be going, yeah, I know exactly what she means. But when your brain is used to saving you from pain, and you have taught it that the best way to do this is to eat because you started doing it at whenever age you did, and it's become so unconscious that you think it just happens automatically, then this is exactly what happens. Let's go to the kitchen. Let's eat something. And then you know what happens? You eat something and your brain goes, ah. But all of these emotions like stress, boredom, restlessness, sadness, shame, anger, all of those feelings you don't have to feel if you want to eat a chocolate chip cookie. And you know what? Sometimes a chocolate chip cookie tastes and feels a whole lot better than these emotions. Oops, sorry, wrong one. So here's the thing. Our bodies came equipped with the perfect instrument to tell us when we need fuel. Perfect instrument. So like when I talk to you about this hunger scale, that's kind of like the instrument that actually works inside of our body. It is a well-regulated system that will always tell you when to start and when to stop. You were born this way. However, that system, this hunger scale that I'm talking about, when I talk to you about eating between the twos, this tool is no longer calibrated for many people. And because of this, that's why I have these advanced tools for many of my clients and podcast listeners, is because when they try to use the hunger scale, what they find is that they just can't quite tell when to eat and when to stop. And the reason for this is because it's not working anymore. And this is what overhunger is all about, is when this tool, this innate thing inside of your body has been messed up. And I'm going to tell you how and why. A healthy body with calibrated hunger, which means you can eat when you're hungry, you can stop when you're full, you're not thinking about food all the time, and you're not eating all the time. That is what we call a body that is fat adapted. And what that means basically is that your body burns its own fat for fuel, which is why like in the olden days, people weren't thinking about eating all the time. They were thinking about where they were going to get their next meal and how long it took to get it. But because of the way the body functions, it could easily burn its own fat and didn't have to eat all the time. And really, I would say that's why fasts themselves actually can be very beneficial to the body, is because when you're not eating for long periods of time, what happens is your body just starts burning its own fat more quickly. And that's not what I'm talking about now, but it's why we really can go long periods of time without eating, without feeling like we're going to die. That's what a fat adapted body feels like. So here's the thing. Do you know the number one thing that you should be eating? And if you've heard this before, then you know. But if you've never heard this before, you probably wouldn't know. Yep. Your own body fat. Yeah. Most of us have plenty of extra fat on our bodies that could be used for energy, right? And because of the way that we're eating and treating ourselves, we're not utilizing this supply at all. And that's the reason our hunger scales are so messed up and they're not calibrated. But really, if you don't eat as often and if you start eating what we're going to talk about, the different foods, what your body will start doing is basically burning its own fat, eating its own fat, or what we're going to call dining in. You know, fat is really not the culprit. Even in your own diet, it's not the culprit. Okay, so before I go any further, I want to see if anybody has any questions. This is a good time to answer them. And I'm going to open up my screen so that I can see your questions. Does anybody have any questions? If you want to ask them, nobody else is going to be able to see your question. It'll just be me reading it. But I want to know if I'm blowing anybody's mind away yet, or if this is making sense, or have you been using a hunger scale? Has it been working for you? Or do you find that it's not working for you at all? Okay. And let's see, somebody's asking, well, okay, so you're asking me about enjoying food. And I wonder, I'm going to talk about a little bit more about enjoyment and where food comes from. But it's like when so somebody's saying to me, like, the hunger scale is working for you. That's really, really good. Why do you think the hunger scale is working for you? How long have you been using it? Not sure exactly what your name is. Oh, 2 days. Oh, good. Wonderful. So you just started using it. And you know what? Most people will say to me, Julie, right, 2 days. But this is what I want to say about that, is that for most of us, first, like for all of my clients, when I first start working with them, we always start with the hunger scale because I want to see how calibrated your hunger scale is. And the way that we do that is we really work on eating between the twos and to see how easy or hard it is for you. And if it is, a lot of times I won't go into these advanced tools because it's not needed, but it's still really important to see physiologically of how your body can work. So I'm going to go on with some more information. And let's see, let me go ahead and share my screen again with you. And I want to talk about the big one called overdesire. Now, here's the thing about overdesire. Desire is, ooh, I really want that. Ooh, I really can't resist that. And desire is an emotion that's created by your own brain. And it's really important for you to see this as I move on and talk about overdesire. It's a feeling. It's a feeling just like disappointment. It's a feeling just like irritation. And here's the thing about overdesire. If you think about babies, like, what do they eat all the time? You know, like for the first year, basically they're just eating breast milk or formula or what, but they're not eating very many different things. And it doesn't seem like they care, right? And I think what happens is that over time, because of the foods that we end up being introduced to in eating, we learn to eat and want foods that absolutely have no place in our bodies, right? We live in a culture that has so many processed foods that our bodies start believing that we need it. And I'll tell you, I talk to most of the people that I talk to think they need it too, as if you were born to eat crap. And that if you can't eat crap, there must be something wrong with you. But actually, what's wrong with you is that you've created a loop in your body by creating a feeling called over-desire. You just want things. And over-desire is something that is learned over time. Just like a calibrated hunger scale, it's like you were born with a calibrated hunger scale, just like this baby. Can you make a baby eat any more than it wants? You cannot. I have a grandson right now that's 3. You think I can make him eat one more drop of anything if he doesn't want it? No way. He's got no type of learned desire to want to eat something that he doesn't want. No way. He just doesn't know how because he hasn't learned. And so this over-desire is something that is learned over time. And then in different cultures, it's different, but our culture specifically is one where over-desire is learned and where there are foods that create this and there are brain loops that support this. So let me show you. This is like one of my favorite things to teach, and it's called the model. And the reason I love to teach it so much is because I want to help you understand where over-desire fits and why it creates so many things that you really don't want. So if you can imagine, I'm breaking this down in a way that you might be able to understand how the brain works. So for instance, a circumstance is a fact in life. It is something that can be proven in court. It is something that will be agreed on by everybody. And it is always neutral. There is no, oh, it's wonderful or, oh, it's terrible. It is just a fact, Jack. Now, circumstances are anything that happen in your life. It's what anybody says or doesn't say to you. These are all circumstances. Now, here's the thing about circumstances. Circumstances are neutral until it triggers what we call a thought. And you know I'm the thought coach, so listen up. Thoughts are sentences that run in your head that are created by your brain reacting to something that happens in the world that is neutral. Whatever it is, it's neutral until you think something about it. And when you think something about it, a sentence in your head, it always creates a feeling. And a feeling is an emotion, and desire is an emotion, and irritation is an emotion. And any type of feeling will always come from something that you think about a circumstance. Many people get confused thinking that their circumstance is what's creating their feelings. But there's always a middleman, and it's called your thoughts. Your thoughts are under your direct control. Circumstances are not under your control at all. Like, for instance, life in general. Things in life happen. You have thoughts about it, and they create feelings. Now, all feelings will create an action or a non-action. You will either do something or you will do nothing. But when that action is created, it always creates a result. So I want to show you how this works with something when we're talking about eating and food, because I'm talking to you right now about over-desire, and I want to show you how over-desire or desire fits in this model and how it creates actions of overeating. So let's just say for you that you go somewhere. You're at an event, and there are cupcakes at the event. The cupcakes at the event are a circumstance. Why do we know that it's a circumstance? Is because it can be proven in court and everybody agrees. So if there are cupcakes sitting there, you and I, everybody sitting here will go, yes, there are cupcakes. Okay. What does it mean? It means nothing. It's neutral. There are cupcakes. Now, you may have a thought such as, I cannot resist cupcakes, or I'm a sugarholic, I have to eat it, or a thought like, I just can't not eat it. Now, any of those kind of thoughts about those cupcakes are going to create this feeling of what we call desire or urge. And desire is exactly what I'm talking to you about now. Desire does not come from cupcakes. Desire comes from your thoughts about cupcakes. And if you have a thought such as, I can't not eat one, or I have to have one, or I can't resist one, it's going to create this over desire, and the action from that feeling always is going to be to eat it. And probably not just one, because over desire creates overeating almost all the time. You know, depending on how much your mouth is watering at the time, and deciding on how afraid your brain is, like, oh my God, we gotta have it, gotta have it, gotta have it. Your brain's just trying to keep you safe. And keeping you safe and keeping you happy means, let's eat it. Now, the result of eating the cupcake is going to be, I create more desire for cupcakes. You create extra weight on your body. And the thing about a result that I really want you to be clear on is that the result will always be evidence for your thinking. So if you believe you have this thought about cupcakes is that I have to have it or I can't not eat it, your result is going to reflect that thought. You will prove it every single time. And yet most people think the problem that they have this desire is because they went to an event where there were cupcakes. But cupcakes aren't the problem. So for me, my biggest over desire would come from potato chips. So just put in the C line potato chips, because wherever potato chips showed up, I absolutely had the thought every time is that I had to eat a whole bag. That was my thought. Well, I have to eat the whole thing. And the only way that I didn't eat it is if I put it underwater or put some kind of something on it that made me not want to eat it, or throw it in the garbage can. Right? But the desire for those potato chips for me was so strong that even if I decided not to eat it, let's say I decided that I wasn't going to eat any potato chips for 2 months. I just want to show you the difference between desire, over desire, no desire, and willpower with this model. So if you can imagine that when you think a thought like I can't not eat it, or for me, I have to eat the whole thing, and it creates this strong desire and I have to eat it. And of course, what I do is I create more of a desire, and I also keep proving the thought that I have to eat it, and I keep proving that, and then not only that, my result is, and I keep gaining weight, all of it. So to me, the only way to truly stop overeating is not to have desire. And the way not to have desire is that, number one, if it's learned, that it can be unlearned. And this is where the pain comes in. Because what I want you to see is that the only reason you have it is because of your mind. And the only reason that that desire could go away is because you changed something in your mind that you believed that you could prove to be true over time. Which is, of course, for me right now, when I see potato chips as a circumstance, they're just potato chips. That's really my thought. It's nothing. It's not what I used to think. And I'm going to show you how you can do this, because if you still have a strong desire for cupcakes or potato chips and you stop eating them, you're using willpower. And you may be able to do it for a while, but sooner or later, willpower runs out. And that is called yo-yo dieting. You know, for me, Weight Watchers, I could do it for a while, over and over again for 30 years, but sooner or later, it gave out. I wanted those potato chips. I always wanted those potato chips. You know, so I could have willpower for a while, but sooner or later, I would give in to that desire. So to me, what I'm teaching you is the way out is to change the feeling that you have and the thought around any food that does that for you. Hope this is making sense so far. And when we talk about the brain and we talk about desire, we have to talk about this chemical called dopamine. Because what dopamine does is it tells your brain to seek more. It's your pleasure. It's pleasure. And what your body and your brain do will depend on the things that you think, but more importantly, on the foods that you eat, because the foods that you eat have a direct result with how much dopamine is going to be released into your brain, how good it's going to make you feel. Now, when we're talking about overdesire, there's a natural amount of dopamine that is always released into your brain. So if you eat like a chicken breast and broccoli, like let's say you're at a -2, you're hungry, and you eat your chicken breast and broccoli, you bring yourself up to a +2 and you feel satisfied, there is a dopamine release that happens in your brain, but it's a natural amount. It feels good. It feels really good to eat when you're not hungry. It feels wonderful, right? But if instead of a chicken breast and broccoli, you choose this, you don't have just a small amount of dopamine that's released. You have an inordinate amount of dopamine that's released in your brain. And it says, give me more, give me more, give me more. And if this feels good, more will be better. It's an inordinate amount, and it creates an inordinate amount of desire. Tricky business. So what I wanted to talk to you about next are the two foods that cause the most amount of problems psychologically, which is overdesire, and physically, overhunger. Now stay with me now. But it's flour and sugar. And what we know, there's enough research, there's enough science to show us that when we eat flour and sugar, it produces an inordinate amount of dopamine in our brains and makes us feel like we can't control ourselves around these foods. And of course, in our culture in America, with capitalism, we have the smartest people using these foods in the most unbelievable ways to have huge dopamine effects on our brain. That is what is going on. And we also have a huge problem with obesity. And I think most of it has to do with the foods and the inordinate amount of dopamine and the problem with the food that we eat and the things that we think. And you know what? You almost feel like there's something wrong with you if you don't eat it or can't eat it, right? You feel like you're being restricted as if you should be one of those people that can eat flour and sugar. But basically, our bodies were never made to eat flour and sugar, and our brains aren't really adapted to be able to do it. It just releases these huge chemicals of great pleasure that makes us believe we have to eat it. And when you look at the foods that people are eating and you look at how we're advertised to, like the more the better, like, you know, if you go to a restaurant and you get a big serving for a small amount of money, you got a great deal and then you should eat it all. It's amazing. And I don't want to blame it on any one thing. I want you to become so aware of just how this affects you, so that you can make decisions based on science and based on how your brain works and based on the foods that are available to you that are not helping you. Okay, so I don't know. Are you looking at your computer screen like this woman is right now and saying, what? No flour and no sugar? I know a lot of people do in the beginning, so I don't usually start with this because the most important thing is being able to learn to be able to connect to your body. And some people that I work with, they still keep flour and sugar. You can still keep it if you want it. You can really do anything that works for you, but you've got to understand what it's like when it's in your system. So I think you have to experience for at least a little bit what it feels like when it's not in your body, and then to be able to make a decision one way or the other how you're going to put it in your body if you're going to put it in your body. But what you have to know, because a lot of people will say to me is, well, I don't want to have to restrict myself like that. I've been restricting myself. That's the reason the diets don't work, is because I'm restricting and depriving myself. And what I'm saying to you is that, number one, you decide what you're going to do, number one, with any of this that I'm talking about, because everything that I do with any individual client is all based on what works for them and getting the results that they want based on the science that I'm teaching. And everybody's a little bit different. But right now, I just want to know if you have any questions about what I've been talking about in terms of overdesire or overhunger. I'm going to stop my sharing for just a little bit and give you a little time to see if you have any questions that you would like to ask me. I don't know if am I blowing your mind away or what? Okay. Okay, so hey, Bridget. So let's see. Bridget says, my biggest struggle is at night when I want to snack. I know I'm not hungry, but the time between dinner and bed is a hard time and a lot of emotions come up. This often leads to me to overdrink wine a little too. What do you recommend? It is such a good question. And you know what I'm going to do, Bridget? I am going to move on to the next segment, because what I'm going to talk about right now is what we call urges, because that's really what you're talking about when it comes to, it can be wine or it can be cupcakes. Either way, there is something going on in your brain that's making you feel like you gotta have it. And it's going to be hard, and it is totally uncomfortable. And I want you to know that that's called an urge. So I am going to keep going, because as soon as you find out about what I'm talking about, an urge, Bridget, I think it's going to help you see what I'm talking about. But I want you to know right now that what's going on in your brain is normal, that your brain is trying to protect you from pain, doesn't want you to feel bad, and it has learned and been wired very unconsciously to believe that that is the answer to all of your problems. And of course, if it was the answer to all of your problems, you wouldn't be talking to me now. The answer to all your problems is all in the R line. So when I talk to you about the model and I'm talking about the R, if your R line is that, number one, you're burning your own fat, you're not hungry all the time, you're losing weight, then whatever you're thinking is creating the result you want, we leave you alone. But if your R is something like what you're talking about, Bridget, like you don't think you can control yourself around alcohol and it's giving you a result that you don't want, we're always going to go back to the mind, and I'm going to talk about urges in a minute. Oh, and Giada, one of my clients, is saying, I know I was shocked when you said sugar. Wait. I know I was shocked when you said sugar included the 1 teaspoon of maple syrup I like to add to my tea in the morning. So a little bit more advanced, but the whole idea is what I like to do with anybody is get all of the sugar out of your system for a while, because every time you put it in, your brain goes, thank you, I can live again. And you're creating the same cycle over and over and over again. And the more that you think you want it, like I just need a teaspoon, I just need a bite. All of that is your brain thinking a thought that is creating desire. Now, I want to get to the next point about how we work with this desire, what we call urges, which I think will help all of you. And so let me move on here and let me share my screen again. And get rid of the shocked lady. It is kind of shocking in the way, because I think most people think, well, I just want to be like everybody else. I just want to be able to eat whatever I want. I want to tell you, everybody else, we're talking about everybody else. Everybody else has a problem with their weight. We have such an obesity problem in this country because we're trying to support a system that is with too much processed food and telling ourselves we should be able to do it. We shouldn't be able to do it. That's what we should be telling ourselves. Not we should be able to do it. And it's like I think about when I talk to a lot of my clients about not eating flour and sugar for a while. And they feel, oh, that's so restricting, and I don't want to have to restrict myself. I say, okay, for any of you who decided to get married and is married right now and in a committed relationship, a happy relationship, did you think when you got married, oh my gosh, I'll never be able to touch or date another man again? And every day after you got married, all you did was just think about, oh, I can't do it anymore. Most people, when they make a commitment like that, you can call it restricting yourself to one man, or you can call it making a commitment to yourself about something that you really, really want. And I think the perfect example is something like that. Or, like if you commit to going to a job. If you have a job and you're working it and you love it and you want to go, are you restricting yourself from going out to other jobs? It's like I just think the way our brains function is because of the society we live in. We think we should be able to do all this stuff and be normal. And yet normal is not eating it. That's really what normal is. Okay, so let me get on to Bridget. Urges and desires. So unlearning desire comes from an allowing an urge and not answering it. Here's the problem with urges, and this is the problem that you're having, Bridget. And anybody that wants to eat a cupcake or a glass of wine when they know they don't want it, but they do want it, but they don't want it, but they do want it, and then they give in and then they feel terrible. An urge and a desire is a feeling that comes from your mind that tells you you've got to have it. And your mind has been telling you that for so long that it feels true. You got to have it. Now, here's the thing about any urge. I want to give you a metaphor for you to think about what an urge is. For any of you who have children or grandchildren or have been around children, can you imagine going to a grocery store with your children, and when they start screaming and yelling at their loudest because they want candy, you give it to them? Now, what do you think is going to happen the next time you go to the grocery store? They're going to know that the louder and harder that they scream and yell, the better chance they have of getting candies and cookies or whatever it is that they're wanting. Consider that like an urge in your brain that's saying, I got to have it, I got to have it. If you give in to that, I got to have it, that screaming toddler that wants it, what you are doing is you are rewarding that urge. And when you reward that urge, think of it as your brain and dopamine. What it does is it perpetuates it and it rewards it, and you're wiring your brain to do it again, just like a screaming toddler, an undisciplined child. Undisciplined children, who in the heck wants an undisciplined child? Where you take them somewhere and they start screaming and yelling for anything that they want because they know you're going to give it to them? You don't want that. And so if you don't want that, in your brain, and you're using a part of your brain that's very different than this primitive unconscious brain that's going, give it to me, give it to me. You have a different part of your brain called your prefrontal cortex, the thinking part of your brain, that makes a decision that the best thing I can do for my child and for myself is to stop giving them the candy. And when you stop giving it to them, it isn't easy, as any of you know, because if screaming and yelling works, then they're going to do it more and it's going to be harder. But if you stop giving into it, what happens is they stop the behavior. And pretty soon, you have well-disciplined children. Think of this as your brain being an undisciplined toddler that is used to getting candy when it screams and yells. That's what an urge feels like. I gotta have it. And you believe it to be true, and you give it, and you feel better, and so you think it's a great thing. And it's a wired loop that's been going on in your brain, a neural pathway, right? And so the stopping of it is what we're talking about. Now, there's 3 ways that you can stop it. The first way that you can stop it is, 1, you can resist it. If you resist the urge, which is what we call willpower, or putting handcuffs on, which is the blog that I just sent out with handcuffs on, is that while they're screaming and yelling, you're screaming and yelling back at them. And so there's a screaming and yelling match going on, and everybody feels terrible, right? It's really hard. You're sweating, all of it. Even if you're not giving in to them, it's still terrible. Now, the other choice you have is, of course, to reward it, which is what you did, which stops that behavior for the minute until the next time you go. The third thing that you can do, which is what I teach, is how to allow the urge to be there. To allow the child to do his behavior and let him go through it, with you knowing that the only way to stop it is to go through it. And what the child or the undisciplined toddler learns is that he's not getting what he wants for that bad behavior, and so he starts changing. I mean, if he's not going to get rewarded, it's going to stop it. It's called extinguishing that behavior. Now, here's the bad news. It feels terrible. And Bridget, this is what you're talking about. You don't want to feel terrible. And yet, if you knew without a doubt that if you could go through what I call the river of misery, and you knew, just like you know that that child of yours is going to be very different if you go through it with them, would you be willing to do it? Would you be willing to go through the discomfort in order to stop the overdesire? And that is what it is, and that's what an urge is like. And I love that metaphor because I work with people so much on that, and it is so possible and it is so doable. But first you have to see that it feels irresistible. It feels like you're working against your own self. It feels like you are out of control. But it's just your brain acting like an undisciplined toddler, and it can be retrained. And there is nothing better than a retrained brain when it comes to urges. It's the only reason I'm sitting here with you now, that if I put potato chips in front of me right now, they would just be potato chips. Same thing even with a glass of wine. And it's not like I'm saying, I don't really care if you eat them or not. I just don't want you to have this strong desire for it. I want you to be able to put it in front of you, and you could take it or leave it. If you want it, eat it. But not this over desire where you feel like you can't control yourself. That's really what we're working on right now. So I hope that helps, Bridget. And I hope it helps everybody, because desire and urges, if you look at the model, it all comes from your brain. So if it's coming from your brain, be willing to feel what's real and not escape it. And you know what? Sometimes the wine sounds better. But here it is. Food is fuel for your body. It's not entertainment. It's not joy. And it's not escape. Your brain believes it is. The reason your brain believes it is because over time, there has been so much thinking created in your brain that it is wired up unconsciously to run unless you become aware that it's running. And that is the biggest thing, is becoming aware and realizing that food is not your entertainment. It's not your joy. It's not your escape. It's fuel for your body. Can you imagine living in your life where you're eating fuel to fuel your body, and you are learning how to entertain yourself, how to get joy, how to get away without using food to help you? It would change your brain immensely. And when you don't have desire anymore, that changes overeating. When you change the foods that you eat, it changes overhunger. Without overdesire and overhunger, there's no more overeating. Listen, I want your food to be boring, and I want your life to be exciting. And I'm afraid for a lot of you, the wine at the end of the day is the most exciting part of your day. And if it is, I want to change it for you where it's the least exciting part. your day, and your day was more exciting, right? So that trying to figure out how to get away is not so important to you. This is all doable, all of it. Okay. Questions. I only have about 3 or 4 more minutes, but I certainly have got to ask. If you want a question, we can go really quick. I'm going to stop sharing for a second just to see if you all have any questions. I have one person just asking me right now, so what about dessert? So here's what I want to say about dessert. Wanting a dessert is something that is so wired and trained in your body. It's one of those things that creates desire. And I have so many. It's just kind of like with Bridget. It's like, I just feel like I need a glass of wine. I just feel like I need something sweet. That is a thought. That is a thought you're creating in your mind. You've thought it for so long. You're creating your own desire, and you don't know it. You think the wine is creating your desire. You think the cupcakes are you think that when you have the thought, I have to have dessert, that's just a fact about life. We all eat dessert. We all are supposed to have something sweet afterwards. Where does that come from? Right? It's just a wired brain that's been wired from thinking thoughts for a long period of time that's created a belief system that's not working for you. It's possible that it can all change. So here's what I want to offer you. And I'm going to share my screen with you one more time. What I love to do after I do something like this is give you an opportunity to get help with all of this. And the best way that I know of to get help with this is to talk to me. And this is the way that I want to offer the way to talk to me. Is I schedule a mini session. And mini sessions are what I do with people who are interested in, number one, going, what did you just say? What did you just mean? I can't do that. I'm a sugarholic. You don't understand. Any of that stuff. It's mini session time. And when I do a mini session, what I like to do is I do it for a few reasons. One is I want you to experience what a real coaching session is, what it is up front. For many people, they've never been with a coach before. And I know, like for me, before I ever got into coaching, I'd never been with a coach before. But a coach is like somebody who can get you out of your brain, or can get into your brain. For me, I love to go into people's brains and find out what's creating these feelings that you don't even know are there. So many of you have so much overdesire going on, and you just think it's coming from cupcakes and cookies and potato chips. And it really isn't. It's coming from your brain that you don't even know what it's thinking. And I want to show you what it's thinking, and I want to show you how you can change what it's thinking. Just think, if I could help you get rid of overdesire and overhunger, there'd be no more overeating, no more of this willpower stuff, no more of this handcuff stuff. You can't stop eating from a place of willpower. Willpower only lasts so long. But if you don't have the desire, that is my goal, is to help you get rid of this desire, right? To make food a little bit more boring, life more exciting. With this mini session, like it says right here, it's free. So what do you got to lose? And of course, if you're a good fit and you want to learn more, I'll tell you more about how my individual programs work, how I use what I'm talking about today to help people lose weight, and more than anything, help them lose the burden and the pressure of what all of this has done for you. And it's not really high pressure. It's not salesy, if that's even a word. But it is an opportunity for you to find out if maybe this is something different for you. And that if this can be your last rodeo, like the last time, that's what I would want. If you're interested, what I'd like you to do is you can go to drdebButler.com/book now. And what I've done is for next week, I've opened up 4 sessions. That's all I have. If you want one of those, I think you should go get it. They're only for next week, and there's only 4 of them. So if you're one of those people who has more questions or more of a desire to unlearn your desire, you can go to drdebbutler.com/book now and see if you can get help for this. So listen, everybody, thank you so much for being with me today. I love doing these. And, if you have any other questions, you know where to go. I would love to meet you. And I would love to help this overdesire, overhunger. And that's how I just want you to think about this from now on. It's like when you're looking at some kind of food and you think you have to have it, see if you can go that extra step to see what is it that I'm thinking. And that's called awareness. Bye, everybody. Thank you so much. Thank you, Cherie or Sherry. I'm not sure what it is, but whatever it is, thank you. I hope you learned a lot. It's a totally different way of looking at this, and I want this to be your very last time.